You're listening to Financial Sense, the podcast that answers real questions about money and your business, two of the most important topics in your life. Recorded and brought to you by National Bank of Arizona, the only bank you need. Hello, I'm Brent Cannon, Executive Vice President and Director of the Community Bank here at National Bank of Arizona. I'm very excited to be joining you here today, recording our very first episode of Financial Sense. On this podcast, you'll hear from real bankers, answering questions you could only ask a friend who's in the business, really understands the local economy here in Arizona. My guest today is John Lewis, our Business Banking Group Regional Manager. Welcome, John.
Thanks, Brent. Glad to be with you here today.
John, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your career?
I've had the opportunity to work with small businesses for a number of years at National Bank of Arizona. I started banking in the northeastern part of the state in the White Mountains, and then was able to work in Yuma for a few years, followed by Flagstaff. And now I'm here in Phoenix running our business banking group with bankers here in Phoenix, Tucson, and throughout Arizona.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, we often talk about John's career. He's been, I think he's certainly our most traveled banker at National Bank of Arizona, covering just about all four corners of the state.
Yeah.
I think the one area you can still cover is the river section, maybe Kingman area, northwest corner.
Yeah, my wife gave a no-go on Kingman.
That's a no-go. Okay. So we're good in Phoenix for a while?
Yes.
All right. That's great. So, John, most of the businesses have really been doing very well. But all business owners that have been through any cycles know that the go-go days, as we often refer to them, aren't going to stay around forever. So what are some of the things that you look and talk to small business owners about how to recession-proof their business?
You know, when I talk to small business owners, is they always are looking to find ways to get better and to grow. You know, as a small business, you always want to see yourself being more successful. And oftentimes businesses feel that being successful leads to growth. And sometimes that can be a little bit of a scary thing if you start growing too fast or starting to get ahead of yourself.
All right.
And so one of the things I like to sit down and talk to them about, what is really that long-term plan and what do they really need to get there without putting too much at jeopardy by over-leveraging themselves.
Yeah, too often they equate growth with growing their balance sheet or in too many cases growing their liabilities, their debts, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what they ought to be probably focusing on is growing that revenue and really paying attention to the margins, i.e. controlling the expenses that go along with growing that revenue.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's focusing in on those key items so will help grow more profitability.
Right.
And then if they want to be able to grow their balance sheet, they can use that through the profits and not getting leverage and growing their liabilities to do such.
Talking about the last Great Recession, it was a difficult time for so many businesses. Can you share any stories, lessons learned that you saw firsthand being a banker through the Great Recession?
You bet. One example that comes to mind was a client that we have who was very reliant on the tourism industry. And obviously during the recession, people that spent discretionary dollars, that was kind of a tough thing because people had less money to spend.
Right.
And as that started to happen, the client was very strategic in the way they approached it. They brought in some personnel that really knew the business and be more strategic in what they were doing. And they also, as they purchased assets, they were very strategic on how they used those assets within their company to ensure that the specific number of assets were providing the return on investment that they needed.
Right.
You know, I saw that their level of efficiency increased dramatically as they improved processes, which I think is really important during the recession. And any time, I think we can all learn that there's efficiencies within businesses that sometimes get overlooked unless we take the time to look closer at them.
Right. I think that's a great point. If the business that I think you're talking about, one of the other things that I remember them doing is they were very proactive in meeting with their bankers. Yeah. And in fact, as I recall, we had quarterly meetings to talk about their strategic focus and changes that they were making to really not only survive through the recession, but also how to capitalize after the recession had occurred.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great thing because we were all going the same direction together.
Right.
They weren't wondering where the bank was on positions and we weren't wondering where they were. We had the same vision, working together to help them have success even during these difficult times.
Any businesses that maybe capitalized or started after the recession that you can think of?
Yeah, I always love talking to those businesses. I say, "Oh, you started in 2010. You're
Right.
pretty brave, right?"
Right.
It's an amazing thing to see happen. I think about one business that we worked with that started post recession, and actually they were in the construction industry, which is unique. But they identified an opportunity or a need within a certain market where they could provide a product at a much more timely, efficient, and cost-effective manner than other people, because as the recession went down, there was less providers in that space.
Right.
And they were able to capitalize on that, which allowed them to really grow their business quickly, even during the ending of the recession.
And that did not come without, a lot of risk, because 2010, 2011, we were not back at full capacity, not even close.
Yes.
So that took some foresight and a well thought out business plan.
Yes, absolutely.
That's great. That's great.
Yep.
I remember a company, and I'll keep the industry separate, but I will tell you that they were heavily related to the home building industry, which we all know was a large and is a large part of our economy here in the state of Arizona. But they had annual revenues year after year north of $100 million, and within a period of about 9 months, not even a full fiscal year, a period of 9 months, they dropped to below $1 million in revenue. That's how fast the Great Recession. And unfortunately, that company had leveraged many of its assets to meet that demand. And also, and here's a big one, the owner could not get himself to make changes in the expense side that he really needed to make. And ultimately, it cost him his business. It's a little bit like how we all try to manage our personal financial situation, which is, let's not get too extended. Let's not get, as the old saying goes, get over the tips of our skis. And so that we have some dry powder when things aren't quite as good. And that's just business 101. It just makes good sense.
Yep.
Yeah, that's great. 3 tips that you'd like to share with small businesses to stave off the worst types of recessions. What are some tips that you can give small business owners?
Yeah, I think the statement often is made about cash being king. The importance of having some cash, some liquidity, to be able to be prepared to overcome a drop or overcome issues. I think that's the first thing I think that I would say, to make sure that there is some liquidity there. Secondly, along with that, is to make sure that the things that you're buying today, will they be helping you make money tomorrow?
Right.
And so does that translate to something that's productive, or is that piece of equipment just going to sit there and look pretty?
Right.
Because sometimes I might think, well, I'll get a tax write-off by buying that piece of equipment, but that might not be the best thing for your cash position. So secondly, I'd say make sure what you're investing in is really going to generate revenue for you.
Right.
And thirdly, I would say not to take your eye off the ball. It's tempting for some business owners sometimes to start seeing some other shiny objects that they want to go work on and forget about their core business. I would say that you got to keep your focus on that core business.
Boy, I think that's great. If I were to offer 3 tips, one of those, keeping your eye on the ball, which I would say maybe a little different, as have a clear vision and know exactly where you want your business to go, and that'll help make some of those strategic and tactical decisions along the way. And so I think I would certainly include that in one of my 3 tips. The second tip is have a strong relationship with your CPA and your banker. And I think you always heard the third, which is an attorney, and certainly that's important. But a CPA and your banker to be able to have these kind of discussions with when things are getting difficult, and even when things are really good, I think makes a lot of sense. And then third and perhaps most important, as a small business owner, remember the importance that people play in the overall success of your organization. And while sometimes you still have to make very difficult decisions, it's still very important to understand that you and your team of managers are leading your most important asset, which are your people. So I think those are 3 tips I would leave, and I would share with small business owners.
Yep, I agree.
what's the one piece of advice you would give today to any of your businesses that you're talking to, that your business bankers are talking to? What's the one piece of advice that you're giving to small businesses that we get to meet with on a daily basis?
I would say, what are you doing today to separate yourself from your competition? What are you doing different to make yourself better than those that you're competing with?
Yeah.
Because when times come around where there's less business, those that are best at what they do are going to be the ones that get the business.
Yeah.
And so what are you doing from a technology standpoint to improve your business, from an educational standpoint to just make sure that you're set apart from your competition when that time comes?
That's great. Well, John, we sure appreciate you taking the time today. And of course, we appreciate everything you do for National Bank of Arizona and all of our clients and prospects. And so thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Like to invite everybody to tune in to our next podcast. If you like what you heard today, feel free to subscribe, Financial Sense. Also, follow us on social media. Love to hear your comments, thoughts, ideas for future podcasts. And thank you again for joining.